All engines running. Commit. Liftoff.
Apollo 12.
Hello, I'm Charlie Welsh. Welcome to the Weather Channel's Forecasting for Space. Americans have been fascinated with space travel since NASA launched the first man into orbit on May 5th, 1961. From those early Mercury rockets to the most recent space shuttles, each mission has taught NASA that weather plays an important role in the space program. In this special, we'll take you behind the scenes of forecasting the weather of a shuttle mission. First, let's go back to the early days when weather impacted America's race to the moon.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
There was a great deal of pressure on the forecasters because we knew there was a whole lot at stake. NASA usually had a very narrow window, and they had to know with a lot of precision what the weather was going to be.
In early 1962, NASA officials were trying to get a man into orbit, a feat already accomplished by the Soviets. John Glenn was the man, and his mission was delayed by technical and weather reasons.
You're anxious to go. You don't want to see things delayed. Astronauts do not dread these flights, as some people seem to think. They look forward to them. They are in competition, in effect, to get into the spacecraft and go, and they look forward to these missions. So it's a big disappointment. But if you have a flight canceled for a while, well, you go back into training and get even more ready for the next time.
The main weather cause for delay was not at the Cape in Florida, but at a site in the Atlantic where the rocket could set down in an emergency. A stubborn low-pressure system out there churned up the seas and gave Glenn plenty of extra time to train.
We had recovery teams out all over the world, and how rapidly they could react if you had to make an emergency reentry and come down in their area. How rapidly could they react, or would they have weather restrictions on what they could do in that part of the world? So weather became a very key factor very early in the space program.
Roger, 0K, and I feel fine. Capsule is turning around. Oh, that view is tremendous.
November 14th, 1969. A cold front moved across Florida as NASA launched Apollo 12. The weather was threatening, but the launch was a go.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engines running. Commit. Liftoff.
36 seconds after liftoff at about 6,000 feet, Apollo 12 was hit by a bolt of lightning.
I don't know what happened here. We had everything in the world drop out. I'm not sure if you get hit by lightning. Fuel cell lights and AC bus light. Fuel cell disconnect. AC bus overload 1 and 2. Main bus A and B out. Okay, we're all organized again, Jack. We've had a couple of cardiac arrests down here too, Pete.
The mission continued to the moon as everything was manipulated back into control. But launch officials learned a valuable lesson when lightning hit Apollo 12. Today, a state-of-the-art lightning detection system protects people and hardware.
Minus 15 seconds.
January 28, 1986. The Space Shuttle Challenger was at the end of a week of delays, mostly weather.
6. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
There were high winds aloft, and the ambient temperature was 36 degrees, 15 degrees colder than any previous launch. The shady parts of the solid rocket boosters were at 28 degrees. The Challenger's booster rocket shook with the force of liftoff. They met winds going in different directions as they rose. The O-rings between the rocket segments were compressing and recoiling to keep a seal. Some of the used rocket segments were not in perfect round, and some of the O-rings might have been too cold.
Challenger, go and throttle up. Challenger, go and throttle up.
One of the things that Challenger made us do, just because of the time element that we weren't flying, it gave us an opportunity to stop and look at everything that we do and see if we couldn't make improvements. And I think we all capitalized on that.
Since the beginning of the space program, weather forecasting has been a major factor in decision-making. As forecasters work to ensure flight safety, they eventually benefit from their work.
So this is a two-way street. The weather forecasting is not only important from the operation of the spacecraft itself, but the spacecraft then can give a lot of information on the ground that is very valuable to prediction of weather right here.
Since the launch of the first space shuttle on April 12, 1981, the shuttle program has been one of NASA's single most important and visible projects. Each year, NASA launches between 7 and 8 shuttles. One mission costs nearly $450 million. 80% of the time, whether the shuttle launches or lands depends on the weather. As the world watches another space shuttle prepare for liftoff, two groups of meteorologists work diligently behind the scenes, making predictions about the weather. These forecasts aren't average or routine. They're very detailed and specific, and they have to be 100% accurate.
It's fair to say that weather is a critical factor in every shuttle launch and every shuttle landing.
Weather forecasting for the Space Shuttle program operations is quite a massive exercise and involves people really located all around the world.
The 45th Weather Squadron, located at Kennedy Space Center in Florida, issues forecasts specifically for Cape Canaveral for the day of launch. At Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, the Spaceflight Meteorology Group forecasts for all possible shuttle landings, from post-launch emergencies to the end of the mission. Coordination between the two is key to a mission's success. However, there is a purpose for their separation.
Since the launch control is in one location and the flight and landing control is in a separate location, each of those control teams requires their own weather support units for briefings, for advice on specific either launch commit criteria for launch or landing weather flight rules for landing considerations.
Both teams of forecasters know intimately the weather guidelines for their part of the mission. If the weather violates any of these guidelines concerning temperature, wind speed or direction, precipitation, lightning, cloud cover, and visibility, forecasters will not give a go for launch or landing. Even if the weather in Florida is forecasted go for launch by the 45th Weather Squadron, SMG forecasters must have go forecasts for certain abort landing sites in case of an emergency.
We have one forecaster designated for the U.S. sites we call the CONUS sites. We have another forecaster who's specifically dedicated to the TAL sites, transoceanic abort landing sites. Those are the abort landing sites in Spain and Africa, where the shuttle could do an abort landing if it's a problem within the first 8 minutes of flight.
Kennedy Space Center is the first U.S. emergency landing option. If the shuttle runs into problems after completing one orbit, it could land at Edwards Air Force Base in California, or White Sands, New Mexico, or even back at Kennedy. The date is June 18, 1996. NASA forecasters are preparing for mission STS-78 of Space Shuttle Columbia. The launch is scheduled for June 20th, 10:49 a.m. Eastern Time. Columbia is scheduled for a 17-day orbit. If it succeeds, this will be the longest shuttle mission ever. It's June 19th, just over 24 hours away from launch. The mission management team, a group of senior NASA project managers, are about to be briefed on weather concerns by Ed Prosellick. He is the launch weather officer for the 45th Weather Squadron at Cape Canaveral. Members of the flight control team in Houston are joining the briefing by teleconference. With them are two members of the Spaceflight Meteorology Group, Wayne Baggett, lead forecaster for this mission, and Dan Ballou, assistant lead. The forecast for the Cape is presented first.
With regard to the forecast, after additional coordination this morning, we went back to what we originally forecast on Monday. It looks like a little less than 50-50 chance we're going to be able to get off the ground tomorrow.
Ed Prosellick passes off to Dan Ballou in Houston.
We concur with everything that Ed is saying.
And about the only significance, actually we're showing over the next 3 days out for the western side some increase in mid and high level cloudiness, but really nothing significant operationally. And so other than the Florida weather, everything looks good in the cones.
Back at the SMG Weather Ops Center in Houston, Wayne Baggett prepares for the launch minus 1 day crew briefing. The briefing is being directed by Flight Director Jeff Vandal.
Well, at Kennedy Space Center, really it's going to be a pretty unstable situation. There's a low camped out over the Gulf. We have sea breeze type conditions that set in later in the day, and so we'll be monitoring slow ceilings.
Wayne confirms this forecast.
So the main concern for Thursday would be the broken clouds at below 5,000 feet and rain showers and thunderstorms within 20 nautical miles based on the position of that upper low.
The crew briefing gives mission astronauts a detailed look at weather conditions for all abort landing sites. This is the last briefing of the day for SMG forecasters. At Kennedy Space Center, 45th Weather Squadron meteorologists continue weather observations through balloon and rocket launches. These are used to monitor upper-level winds in the atmosphere. Launch day begins early for NASA forecasters. The first order of business, the tanking briefing, to determine if weather conditions for fueling the space shuttle will be acceptable.
Forecast for tanking only is for scattered cloudiness, good visibility, winds becoming southwesterly, generally 12 knots or less.
Johnny Weems gives a go for tanking, but still has some concerns for launch.
The probability of weather prohibiting launch at this time is 40%. All launch commit criteria at this time is green, and anticipate no problems until mid to late morning.
The feeling is the earlier the shuttle launches within the 2.5-hour window, the better. The scheduled launch time is 10:49 a.m. Eastern. Shortly after the tanking briefing, lead forecasters begin to arrive and are updated on overnight weather changes. The next few hours will be spent updating forecasts, looking at current models, and monitoring upper winds in the atmosphere. At 6:45, SMG forecasters are called on for the final crew briefing.
Good morning, and Wayne, I'm going to turn it over to you for the CONUS weather briefing.
Okay, good morning Tom and crew, it's Wayne Baggett here. You have our video?
The crew brief is the final activity for astronauts before suiting up for launch. Meanwhile, forecasters at the Cape discuss new weather developments.
We're ready to look at that scenario of East Coast sea breeze going through. We may have a problem with the window.
Looks like, once again, early in the window is going to be better than later in the window. Despite the potential of low clouds and showers along a sea breeze near the Cape, all forecasters are still go at this time. Less than 2 hours before launch, the flight director in Houston and launch director at the Cape call on forecasters for weather updates.
So our main concern then would be areas to the west, and of course in the vicinity of the SLS itself. One concern is the Merritt Island effect, that sometimes you get a line of Q forming right over the island there if the winds are very light, and they're pretty light right now.
Bottom line is we're currently green on all launch constraints, and as I mentioned, we'll be watching very closely to see what the cumulus clouds do both overhead and any potential activity to the west of us. Over.
We need to decide here what we're going to do with this cloud bed once it starts forming. I need a little more analysis left, and I'd like to do some more work with the STA and with the PAO camera as well, and any of the...
Less than an hour to launch, and Wayne Baggett calls on the recon pilot for more analysis. Ed Proselic goes to the rooftop to assess the situation. Conditions at the Cape quickly change.
Okay, there's some cumulus, and there you can see it starting to pop, unfortunately. So we need to go fast.
Time is of the essence now. Less than 10 minutes before launch, forecasters make their final calls.
The launch director, we have no constraints to launch.
And weather slide on the flight loop?
Yes.
I know we haven't talked about it, but the OBS and forecast at Edwards unchanged?
Unchanged.
So they're both go, and OBS and forecast at KSC are go.
That's correct.
The countdown begins.
11, 10, 9, 8. We have a go for main engine start.
Cape forecasters head to the roof for liftoff.
3, 2, 1. And we have liftoff of the Space Shuttle Columbia on an international life science and microgravity mission.
SMG forecasters continue to monitor the weather for abort landing sites.
We need to wait till Nico for the and then really, I'm not really out of the woods for another 25 minutes yet.
Columbia, negative return. Negative return, Houston.
The shuttle clears the first emergency landing site.
Columbia, press to Miko. Press to Miko.
Just 4 minutes later, the shuttle clears the overseas emergency landing sites and is on its way into orbit.
Welcome to space, ladies and gentlemen. Hit it!
It's been 16 days since the launch of Space Shuttle Columbia. SMG forecasters in Houston are briefing the flight director on weather conditions for tomorrow's scheduled landing at Kennedy Space Center.
Looking at the forecast for tomorrow for in the mission, I think things are going to start improving beginning later today as the ridge of high pressure that you see there to the right of your screen will be building westward across Florida.
With the stationary front in place again tomorrow across Florida, forecasters have to decide how much of a chance there will be for showers and low clouds at landing time. Kennedy is the only landing option for tomorrow.
I guess you have nearly a go forecast for tomorrow with a concern in the area of showers. We'll have to watch.
Yeah, that's a real-time call there. We'll know that. We'll know better about that when we come in tonight on the entry ship.
Lead forecasters return for the entry ship, only to learn that their primary radar for the landing site is down.
I guess you've gotten the word on our radar being out at Melbourne. Bob Cabana, did you hear that? Did you know about that? Okay, our next rad system in Melbourne took a lightning strike during the day, and we won't have that to use for this mission. So
Wayne Baggett informs the flight director and the reconnaissance pilot about the handicap. They will rely more heavily on the pilot's eye view. The first recon reports come in.
There might be a lower deck to the north.
You may have to be watch that real close. Right close to the edge on those ceiling limits.
Right now, the cloud ceilings are between 7,000 and 8,000 feet. Anything below 10,000 feet is a violation. If ceiling heights don't rise before landing time, forecasters will be forced to give a no-go for landing. An hour later, Wayne notices a change.
But I'm seeing something over here now that's encouraging me. You see this big hole that's developing right over here between Tampa and Orlando? That's a reflection of the drying that's
moving in.
Yeah, that's a reflection of the drying that's taking place as that ridge builds over South Florida, and that should gradually build northward. So that big opening there may save us.
With a more promising forecast on the table, Flight Director Jeff Vantel reminds Wayne of the next and most important milestone, the de-orbit burn.
Well, I want to make a decision 20 minutes for the burn, and if we're not confident, we'll wave off and we'll wait a rev.
With daylight, cameras positioned around the landing facility confirm that, in fact, the low cloud situation is improving. Wayne will give a confident go forecast for the de-orbit burn.
We can see the clouds now on video. We've got some daylight out there. And as long as they don't seem to be lowering, then I think we're going to be in good shape.
Only minutes later, a new problem arises.
That's a violation.
That's a violation.
This one is out of the forecaster's hands.
Weather, just so you know, I don't know if you can comment on conversation, we may not make this first opportunity with systems.
Okay, then if that's the case, then we'll have to really look close at the winds for the second. And we'll have to evaluate that in real time.
We'll take a good look at the next opportunity. Right now, you are go for this opportunity, obs and forecast.
Go observe, go forecast for the first opportunity, no go for the second.
Isn't that good?
Weather has given a go for the first de-orbit burn. If the hardware problem is not resolved soon, crosswind violations could make the second landing opportunity a no-go call. Now it's just a matter of watching and waiting. Finally, the waiting is over.
Capcom Flight, let's give the crew a go for the burn at this time.
Well, I guess that's it.
There is no turning back. The shuttle will now re-enter the Earth's atmosphere.
Good, and we'll go for this burn. Okay, Flight.
Again, these views are from the flight deck on board Columbia, the pilot's point of view camera mounted just to the left of and in front of pilot Kevin Kriegel as Commander Tom Hendricks continues to aim Columbia towards its landing at runway 33 in just 4.5 minutes.
We see him go into the clouds and break out.
He is watching his...
Commander Tom Hendricks manually flying Columbia through the heading alignment cylinder to line himself up for final approach to runway 33 at the Kennedy Space Center. It's currently at an altitude of 3.5 miles.
Houston, Columbia, runway inside.
Roger, Tom, runway inside.
I've never seen anything like this before. This is a first. We seem excited because we've never seen this before.
On final approach to runway 33, to Kennedy Space Center, Columbia is now flying at an angle that is 6 times steeper than a commercial airliner as it continues to approach the landing site. Columbia descending at the rate of 165 feet per second. Landing gear down and locked. Main gear touchdown.
There we have it, the end of the longest space shuttle mission ever.
Outstanding.
All right.
job. That's right.
Hey, thanks.
Great work, Wayne.
Thanks.
Columbia mission STS-78 is complete. Landing at Kennedy Space Center saves NASA time and money. Landing the shuttle safely, however, is NASA's #1 priority. Launching and landing could not happen without the critical and accurate forecasts provided by both the Spaceflight Meteorology Group and the 45th Weather Squadron. With the Weather Channel's forecasting for space, I'm Charlie Welch.